All right, you guys. I know you've come back. I know why you've come back. You've come back to hear the new word. You've come back. You know that I'm on this rhythm. Do you know how difficult it is to find the most incredible word for the best podcast guests and podcast audience ever? You guys rock. You know you rock. I know you rock. And so what am I going to call you today? We've always come, well, why don't I just say that you're incredible rock stars? So I'm just put those two together. You guys are rocking it. Thank you so much. You know, this is a platform for entrepreneurs and innovators and creatives and media to get out a very cool message, really honestly about gumption, about taking on the mission, what it takes, why they took it, why they keep taking it. And it's inspiring. At the very least, it's hilarious. And it allows people to go and be crazy in their own world, whatever it means. Like whatever mission that you're, wavering on, or you're going to take in 5 years that you don't even know that's coming. Like you're just pipelining bravery at this point, right? Whatever your story is, we so thank you for sharing the word, because that's what it takes, right? It takes a little bit of gumption, takes a little bit of hell yeah, when you don't know that hell yeah is going to be the way to go. So I'm, as always, impressed and enthusiastic about today's show. We have someone on that we have not had on before, and that's pretty cool and funky. So we have a guest who gets asked the same questions over and over again, because you probably haven't heard of what she does either. So I would like to introduce you to my personal first time meeting a female stunt coordinator. Maja, please welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi.
Happy to be here.
I know. So look, when we talk about mission, when we talk about saying yes, when we talk about making decisions, really, what was it that was appealing about this type of work? Or did it fall in your lap? Or is it something that you always wanted to do since you watched Wonder Woman when you were a child? Like, tell us, what preceded this great career of yours?
Well, I was a professional athlete for a while. As a teenager, I competed in a lot of sports. I downhill ski race, I downhill mountain bike race, I showed horses. So I was always very physical, but I did not know that being a stunt performer and then transitioning into being a stunt coordinator was even a job until I was probably like 18. But then
No, I was going to say that's, I mean, and you're not 19. So interesting, because people, even though people would imagine that those jobs are available, it's those really interesting jobs that we hear about that people do that we don't necessarily put together. Like if someone's looking to go into, well, even the film industry or whatever, it's probably not the first three things that pops into people's mind. They're like, well, of course there would have to be, people that do stunts. Of course and we know that, but I don't think it comes to top of mind. So at 18, it's pretty young.
It's definitely on the top banner at job fairs. No, and I think maybe I was 18, 19. And I just I started doing some background and looking at film stuff and just was experimenting with what I wanted to do. I went to school for fashion design, which is completely on the other side of the world. And then I sort of just started getting teased at this world. And I was like, you know what? I think I really enjoy this. And I think I want to jump into this path instead of this path. And that's how I got my start. And from there, I've just snowballed in all the learning, and I threw myself into training and learning, getting as many courses and things that were applicable to my job that I could possibly get.
So is there a school, or does someone take you under their wing? Are you apprentice? Like, how does that work?
There are some stunt schools, but they're not really, most of them aren't really fully respected in the industry. So I wouldn't recommend that as an avenue to go, but there are specialty courses. Like there's some driving schools. There's a really great one in LA, Rick Siemens, that pretty much everybody has gone to at some point. There's, getting new licenses, like your motorcycle license, making sure you can drive a variety of vehicles, going to fight classes, fight choreography, different martial arts. So a lot of it's just broad, as many things as you can learn how to do and have a high level of skill in, the better. But nothing really specific, no.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And it's interesting even when you're talking about fashion, because my son went that kind of opposite as well. We just had, he wants to go into fashion. Well, he's in fashion and learning fashion, and people are like, oh, is he in school? Is he in this? And he is in that. And ironically, he was too young to be accepted into the classes. And so we did what you did and put him with he's understudied, he's worked with this designer and hopefully he'll work with another designer. And we just had a call from the school again saying we can take him. And I'm like, I'm not sure we need you. I'm really not sure we need you.
Better education where he is.
Yeah, a little bit like that. So that's interesting that you kind of put it together. So when you made the announcement to your family, to your friends, to your man, to your woman, to your girlfriends, to like, what were people saying? You're like, I think I'm gonna go. I was gonna be a fashion person. I was gonna make some cool, funky stuff for people to wear. Now I'm gonna go, play, smash up derby. Like, what was the responses that people gave?
Well, my parents, they were like, okay, well, that's an interesting phase. You'll grow up and you'll get a real job. Because still a lot of people really don't think a lot of film industry jobs are real jobs, but they are. They can have a full career. I have been doing this for almost 20 years now, and it's a career.
Yeah.
But yeah, my friends, I think a lot of my friends were like, okay, that's cool, but like, are you sure you want to do that? Because I think it's really dangerous, isn't it? Or a lot of people have the misconception that you have to be this crazy adrenaline junkie. You definitely have to be a certain type of person to do stunts, because you have to understand that you're doing very physical things, but it's a very big mental game as well. And you also have to keep yourself safe. You're not just being this crazy adrenaline junkie hucking yourself off things, because you have to do it precisely. You often have to do it repeatedly, and you don't want to get hurt, because then you can't work for a while.
Right.
It is a calculated game of extreme sports and extreme athleticism, but it's a bit of a safe box.
Safe box. So, I'm sure you've been asked this question, but, have you been injured? And is it one of those areas of careers that if you get injured, you're kind of, you can't work till you're back, but what is that like to be able to, if you have a career? It'd be like if someone said, I don't know, if most entrepreneurs get hurt or that kind of thing. If you get hurt, then it's like, oh, wow, that's a different experience financially and otherwise. So what's it like in your sector for you on that?
It is. And I have been injured before. I've also had some that people would consider them to be really bad, but they're not actually. Like, I've cut myself a lot. I actually had one stunt where I cut basically the whole side of my face, and I just had cuts everywhere. So it looked really bad, but it wasn't actually. Like, I was back to work in 5 days. It wasn't actually debilitating. I went to work the next week with stitches in my face. Like, you can still work through a lot of it. But I've had a few that have slowed me up for a little while.
Yeah.
Those ones are a little more challenging, I guess, because you're trying to get back to work, but you also want to let it heal properly, so you don't set yourself up for long-term, crippled, being that person that's like walking around like they're 60 when they're 40. When I was in my 20s, you do sort of think of that a little bit, but at the same time, you're also like, I just want to get back to work. So like, I might have torn something, but I'm fine.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of when I was younger, I definitely wasn't quite as smart with injuries. Now, where I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to let it heal and I'll recover and get strong again, and then do stuff. Whereas when I was younger, I would be like, I'm just going to go back to work. I tore something in my knee, but I'll just tape it up.
Well, I think that's I
do not recommend that. So everyone listening, let your body heal. Sets you up better for the future.
I think that's a very entrepreneurial way of thinking. I remember there was a gentleman, and he was a smart guy. So when I used to have a private health clinic, and when I first started my business, it was, massage, whatever. And I literally started massaging from home until it went to a clinic, until it went, as it grew. But he went through a magazine that I was advertising in. It was called Common Ground. You might remember it, in Vancouver. And
all the health store,
all the health store places, and all of us holistic practitioners that he knew wouldn't have insurance, right? He knew we probably wouldn't have health insurance. Everyone's just kind of starting and budding, and gosh knows how long that was, like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And he contacted me, and he's like, if you got injured, what would you do? And I'm like, no idea. Probably keep working. Isn't that what we all do? Because you're entrepreneurial and you got food and kids and, all those kind of things that need you. And so he was really smart. He built his whole client base with entrepreneurs, knowing predominantly we needed something, but also knowing that we probably wouldn't, tap into it because you need to work. So anyways, I remember I had this and we talk every year, how's it going, blah, blah, blah. And it was a disability deal, and you cash out in 20 years, right? And not too many years ago, 5 years, whatever it was, I was like, oh, okay, I'm cashing that out. That was really cool. I never touched that money. And then I thought about it. I'm like, that's kind of strange. In 20 years, I never touched that money. Now, here's the interesting thing. We were talking and he's like, it was really interesting that you would never cash it out when you had, your daughter. You never cashed it out when you had your son. You never cashed it out. Well, obviously then it was older than 20 years because my daughter's 29. You just never cashed it out. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm really healthy, but I'm like, I didn't know I could.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could. Because that's how we think. We just drive down. He goes, yeah, he goes, you've never, and I go, I bet you, if you actually go back, he goes, I know what you're going to say. If you go back and look at the entrepreneurs that he had insurance, he goes, it just didn't cross their mind, which was great because I got more money at the end. But there was times where I could have really needed it.
Right. You probably should have taken that little self-imposed maternity leave and pay yourself.
Yeah. Things that we think about.
The things we learn.
Absolutely. So look, you have more in your life than just your work. You are balancing life, family, career. And most people, when you hear film industry, you're like, there is no balance. It's long hours. It's long game. What's that like for you? How do you balance this whole party?
It's definitely a juggle. I'm very fortunate that my husband is a great partner. We work together a lot, which is fantastic. He's a stuntman as well. So we do try to have that balance where we try to both not be working or insane or running something at the same time. We've done it a little bit and we're like, okay, we can't do that anymore. We started a family a few years ago. Yeah. We have 2 young boys, so that now we definitely don't take on a big project at the same time. Ever.
Right.
That's our new rule, so that we have that family balance, and that so the boys always have one of us here.
Right. Yeah. It's tough, right? And it's interesting. So you're both in the industry, which I think helps, doesn't it? I mean, there's a level of understanding that comes with that level of compassion. There's
that knowing that I don't know what time I'm going to be done work. You can, depending on the show and depending on how the day is set up, you can kind of guess, but you get thrown curveballs all the time and you just never know when you're going to be done. Yeah. And for us, it's nice. We do enjoy working together as well, because we bounce ideas off each other and we're like, okay, I was thinking this for this, and this is how I'm going to plan this. Like, what do you think? And we balance ideas off each other, which is really fun. And then we also train as well together. We built a gym in our living room. So we have a big setup where we can test wires, and we have a trampoline in our living room, which our kids love too.
Yes.
We can do a lot of our training and setting stuff up at home. So that was another balance for us. Instead of driving to somewhere to train, we can save that time, and all that time that we would spend commuting, we can actually just spend as a family or as a couple.
Yeah.
And get some of that quality time back. So that was our other balance and time saver.
Well, I think those are great, for anyone out there that's looking to balance in any way. Like, even people talked about that with just, this whole idea of working from home, how much time that they save. And some people really have embraced that and wanted to stay with that. And then other people not, right? They're like, get me out. But just all those time saving those layering techniques that we have to use as people that have full lives. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Keep it up. So I'm in the book business, as we know. I love collaborations. I love books. I just was so graced to do a foreword of a very cool woman's book on leadership, and it just arrived in the mail. Yay. Yeah. I think that's really the only thing I get on Amazon is I support people's books. But so authorship is such an interesting experience. I just came from a 3-day workshop with Cheryl Strayed, who of course did the movie Wild, or she wrote the script for Wild, or it was her book, and then Reese picked it up and did it. And I thought I was walking into a crowd of 35 people. There was actually 400 and 700 on Zoom. And it was so interesting to meet all sorts of people that are into authorship. Some people writing journals, some people actually the woman who is the writer for Family Guy. We did some, you have to work with a partner, you have to find a partner and spill your guts, those kind of workshops. That's what it was. So excited for that part. But there was all these different types of authors and poets and journalists and people that want to be. So I hear that you have stepped in to the world of authorship. Share. You got a novel coming up or going on?
And we're working on, I write scripts quite a bit. I've written a few short films that I have directed and produced as well. But I also have a graphic novel that I'm working on that is probably my biggest, aside from my children, life passion project. I've been sort of dabbling in and out of research on it for about 10 years, but I'm really focusing on trying to get it done right now. I'm working with an amazing artist, Lonnie Emery. She's illustrating it because I am horrible at drawing. I draw a little I draw my little storyboards. And I'm like, can you make it look better? And they write out the book. So we've been collaborating together. So that's my book that is in the works that I'm very, very excited about. It's a story following the Amazons in ancient Greece, but sort of from their perspective, because they're dabbled on in history, but nobody really wrote that much about them because it was a bunch of women, because they didn't write the history books. So I'm kind of taking the little tidbits that I can find in history, and they've uncovered more of their burial sites and things like that. So we've learned a little more about them in the last 10 years. So as that information is coming out, I've been layering that into the story, trying to have a bit of fact and then, my own fictional version of it as well.
Wow. I mean, that's not that, again, I mean, you're such a creative woman, my dear. And that's a very interesting book as well. So you have this interesting career. You have a little bit, so this is not a book that you're going to be in competition with, 500. There's not going to be a sector for that. It's not like you're going into self-help or leadership or cooking or, how to balance, careerhood and motherhood. No. What made you decide to pick that? Where did that come from?
I think the story, once I sort of just dabbled into some of the characters, and then I was like, oh, and the more I started to research, I was like, nobody's told this story. And it just, I don't know, for whatever reason, it just grabbed my heart and soul. And I was like, I just need to tell this story. And I want to do it as a film someday. So that was the eventual goal, is the graphic novel is the vessel to make a film. As I think it's just an interesting story from an interesting perspective that no one's seen that part. And I love historical pieces. I love researching historical things. And so I think that just pulled me in, and I was like, I want to unleash this story on the world. I think people need to see this perspective from that time period, because
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. So, do you have a title that you want to share, or do you want to drip on us and make us excited? What's your, what you have to do a launch? We're going to have to announce when the launch is. Yes. Bring you back on, and we're going to have a launch. But I'm all about the party. I'm all about the party. You know that, right? I'm all about the party. So what, do tell, if you can, anything more.
It's called Amazon. So like Amazon, but with an E on the end, because that is traditionally how they actually spelled or wrote about themselves, the Amazons. Yes. So that is the title, and there is an Instagram page for it that we haven't put too much out yet, because we're still working on a lot of the art and getting the pieces together. But it's Amazon the graphic novel on Instagram. I've tagged it on my own personal page, so if you follow my personal page, you can link in through there.
Wow, absolutely. So you guys need to do that so that you can watch the progression. I love that, right? I love that. When you're watching the procession, really, an organic creative growth project. I love it because it does turn and twist. I mean, I just shared with you earlier how we just made a big twist on a project that we're doing. And, you're like, oh my gosh, we got to make a twist. And then you're like, oh my God, look at the opportunity. And then at a certain point, you're like, okay, we've twisted and created enough. And then the project starts, and then it gets interesting. It gets interesting, and following people through that journey is so incredible. I think I think it builds a relationship. It builds a relationship to the project.
Yeah, and I think it'll hopefully with our sort of plan, as we start releasing a little bit more on social media, it'll get you to know the characters a little bit before. They've been so true to me for so long, and even seeing them drawn for the first time, like I had a vision of them in my head, and as soon as Lonnie drew them, they were exactly what I had imagined, which was weird that her and I were such, like, that's why it's such a good partnership, is that she really understood my vision so clearly, and just my descriptions of the characters, she brought them to life, and they look exactly like I imagined them.
Wow. Wow. I'm getting a flashback of grade 10 art class when we were told that we had to, and I mean, we were told that we had to draw. So I love to draw. And we had to draw like a cave or some kind of platform, some kind of, stable platform where there was beings, didn't have to necessarily be human beings, but they had to have the elements of a human being. They had to have the ability to see, to hear, to move, to speak. And oh my gosh, it was, I mean, weird in school. I mean, it's not weird that I ended up, massaging, tens of thousands of people, but I was very fascinated with drawing anatomy in school. Like I draw a rib cage. I draw like, people drawing flowers in a vase, and my teacher just walked by and she's like, you do you passed, so you did a rib cage. So I found it very interesting, of course, because I got to meet these really incredible creatures and make these creatures. So I am very excited to see what that looks like. That's all. Not that they would look like, what I drew, but they just, they had to have all the functionings, but yet they had to be very distinct and very different and very, interesting.
Strong looking women.
Very cool. Very cool. Yay. Okay. So you are working and love and have a big heart for philanthropy. And we were talking a little bit about that pre-show. I'm really excited to hear what it is, how that's inspired you. Everybody here is on their way to Ireland because they're going to come to the project that we're doing. And we're not doing that for 10 months, but we have, ironically, when I pulled the statistics, which is why I love on this audience so much, but when we pulled on, the stats of, where's the listenership coming in from, Ireland was number 2. I'm like, well, there's a shock. There's a shock. Because we're going to be doing our philanthropy project, of course, all through Canada and all through Ireland, but it impacts everybody. And what about you? You've got something stirring?
I don't have my own thing. I'm more like, I like to dive into other things and see. A lot of mine is, I'm a curious person, so I like to learn. So a lot of mine has been learning, and I've done a few really interesting projects. I mean, in 2010, my husband and I spent, it was 7 weeks in East Africa, and it was sort of I jumped on. I didn't really know what we were doing, but we ended up living in this village and working with a bunch of locals. They taught us how to build mud huts from scratch. We ended up building 21 homes for women with AIDS who were affected by the LRA army in northern Uganda. So that was my first big jump in, where I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, just to get to learn about a culture in that way, and just to get to live, to live with people. Because a lot of times, it's that tourism one where you go in, you kind of see stuff, but you don't really get immersed in the culture. And there was no infrastructure there was no big setup, there was nothing fancy, and it was not with a big organization or anything. It was just a bunch of people where we kind of got together, and one person had kind of loosely organized it, and then we just went. And that group of people I'm still amazing friends with, and it was just this weird mesh of people, and it shockingly worked out. And we got to do something really cool and meet this community and meet people and hear their stories. And I think that's what inspired me to do more, was that learning process of actually learning about another culture hands-on, and getting to bring those stories home. And and just seeing that most people don't want a handout either. Like so many people, that third world countries, they just want to get food, and they want to learn, they want just that little leg up to get back to being able to sustain themselves again. And that, I think, was the biggest lesson I learned, is that nobody wants a handout. Everybody just wants to be able to survive, though, and to get, these areas that have been so devastated by war and so devastated by some other natural disasters and things, and war on top of that. They just want just to have the baseline leveled up so they can survive again.
I think, it's interesting how we all, or when people fall in love with philanthropy, whatever that is, there's really that essence. I think they say a lot of that about when you give, you get more in return, but I would agree with you. I think even when we think in our lives, like, oh man, I just would like even when people say, man, I would just love to win the lottery. It's not that you're actually wanting someone to come up and give you cash. You're wanting relief of something. Like if you're in that place where you just need this, you just need, like you said, to level up or to baseline or to pay for that I think that's a lot of what philanthropy, what stems from philanthropy and giving, is just allowing somebody else to take a deep breath or to sit back or to receive, which is, difficult when you're in survival, like I would imagine that they were in a big place of survival. That's a very difficult place to be in to begin with.
Yeah. And just getting that little moment where you're not in panic mode so you can reorganize everything. I think that trip really inspired me to do a lot more. I mean, it inspired a lot in my life, because at the end of it, we were already over in East Africa. So I was like, I really want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Because I'm a mountaineer. I spend a lot of time in the mountains. That is my happy place. And on that trip, my husband, we ended up getting engaged on the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. So that is where the name came from. We took the last 3 letters of the mountain and made that our last name when we got married. So,
oh, wow.
That trip was pretty impactful for me, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So this is not your birth last name, and it's not his birth last name.
It's not. No, it's our combination. And we decided when we were getting married that we wanted to create our own family, create our own little universe.
Yeah. Well, that's my dear, you are a woman of firsts. I love it. I think you should take that. I'm going to give that to you as a hashtag. That's free. Hashtag woman of first. It's all yours. Take it, run with it, make the t-shirt, make the project, make it your second book. Okay. I do. So I can't help it. I'm sorry. Look at, I just love and see the power of word in print. The power of word in print is incredible. And of course, I'm caught up in this big 262 women power of word in print. So I'm kind of breathing it and living it every day. But look, I want to get back a little bit to your stunt work. And I know we could obviously clearly talk all day, which means that you need to come back, and we're going to do that. But look, you did something that was pretty unusual. I think that you get asked this question a lot, have you met famous people? You're like, of course. Have I, what's it been like? Is it strange? But there was something that was really important to you. And I want to make sure we highlight it before we kind of sign off a bit, is you were working while you were pregnant.
Yes, I did perform some stunts when I didn't know I was pregnant, but then I was just coordinating. So I wasn't doing dangerous risky things with a human growing inside me.
Yeah.
I was conscious of that. But yeah, I was stunt coordinating with my first. I was coordinating till I was about 7.5 months pregnant, which is, I think, looking around the world, I do believe it was a first. I don't want to claim that it was, but it definitely doesn't happen very often, because there's not that many female stunt coordinators. There is a lot more in the last 5 years, which is amazing. I love that our numbers are growing, but it's still not a huge field full of women. And then to tap on actually having a baby while you're doing that job, I don't think it's not a thing.
Right.
And even pregnancy as a stunt woman and like having children, it still is a bit of a stigma. It's still a thing where people try to hide it, hide their pregnancies for as long as possible, and then sort of just go into hiding and then have the baby and come back and be like, okay, I'm good to go. I can do stunts again. And just sort of, it's a really weird thing, because I think there's this sort of thought that people don't want to put mothers at risk, but when we're saying yes to the job, we still want to do it. We still want to do our job. We still want to perform. Again, I've been lucky that I work with my husband. So since having children, I have done some really great stunts. Like this year, I got to do the last sort of stunt that I'd never done before. I got to flip a car 2 months postpartum, which I would probably nobody really does either.
Right.
But for me, I really wanted to do that stunt. I've crashed cars, I've crashed motorcycles, but I'd never actually flipped one before. So I really wanted to do that stunt. So even, I guess that's my other proof, is that just because I have children and I'm a mother doesn't mean I can't do my job. So for me, it's a standing point of like, look, I don't want to say I can do it all, but I can balance it. I can do both. I can still have my career and have my family. And obviously my family is the most important thing right now. So I'm focusing more on them, but I still can have those moments where my career is still progressing. And I realized, especially when I was pregnant with my first son, that I was in a really critical position. I was visible. I'm visible on social media, and being a coordinator, I could walk to work proudly pregnant. So I took that on as my own personal little mission of, I'm going to try to change and make this normal. So I posted on social media often, this is what a stunt coordinator can look like. And I even got, I got producers and people on board with me and writers from the shows I was working on. And they were all on board with like, yeah, this is what our stunt coordinator is. And it was a small little patch, but I think it hopefully started a little bit of a ripple effect that hopefully will keep growing into some bigger waves over the next decade or so and make it more normal.
Well, it does start there, right? And it sounds so cliche and it sounds so Hallmark and it sounds like I'm going to walk into the store and buy a Carlton card that says, it only takes one, because we've heard it so many times, right? But it does. Like it does.
Got to throw the first pebble, right?
And not only that, but I think what we don't talk about, because it's like, oh, takes one, the fear, the unknown, this could go in an opposite direction, because we've seen that happen too. We've seen people stand up. We've seen people stand up, and even if we've watched it on TV, like we've seen people, no longer on the planet that stood up for something that was really important to them. And so it trickles down in our subconscious when we make a bold move. And it may not be a bold move for someone to say, oh yeah, well, okay, that's cool. But it's your internal bold move. It's the dialogue that goes on when you put that post on social media. Like this could end my career. This could help my career. This could piss people off. This could make people happy. This could get me fired. This could get me hired. Like all of that stuff. I went through it in a very different way. I think we all go through it in a different way when we stand up for something, or we make our voices known, or we try to put, like when you say a ripple, sometimes we're trying, we're like, like we're sailing through, like, we're making huge waves. And we know by nature, we might be making someone happy, but we're probably going to piss off something, or we're going to try to break the norm. I think that all goes through in one little millisecond. It's
a little bit scary to throw that. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like I did have those thoughts where I'm like, could be detrimental to my career. But the first time a woman messaged me back and was like, oh my God, I'm so stoked that you're posting this. And then slowly more stunt women trickled in, like, and a lot of them didn't want to post publicly, so they would just DM me. But it was that, we're so glad that you're doing this, because I'm not brave enough to share like that yet, but it's so cool that somebody is. So I was like, okay, it's worth it. And then same when like the production, I happened to do 2 projects for Netflix back to back, and they got on board, and then right after that they did their, I can't remember what the campaign was called. It was like Strong as a Mother or something. And they did a whole campaign on all the working moms that were working at Netflix. And it was this really cool campaign that they put out. And it was kind of like right after that. And I was like, okay, they're listening. People are listening. It wasn't detrimental. It started, and those projects were already in works, but it was part of this wave that was starting. So I was like, okay, it wasn't a bad thing.
No, it's monumental. It was like when I had my healing studio. So we're talking again, 29 years ago. And we did massage and reflexology, which was still considered woo-woo back then. And we did, lymphatic drainage, and we did that. But we also did chakra balancing and energy work. And there was intuitives on staff, and there was readings, and there was all this stuff. And we literally were so scared, we created 2 brochures. We did, because we didn't want people to not come. It just wasn't, woo-woo wasn't accepted. Like, take it 29 years ago, before Starbucks, people, woo-woo wasn't accepted, before cell phones, you know, woos wasn't accepted. And so we went through that same thing, but you know what? It reminds me of when I finally, so one of my bucket lists, I'm going to ask you what's on one of your bucket lists, but, and then we're going to wrap up because we could literally talk forever. But when I met Gloria Steinem for the first time, which was just a lifelong dream for me, that was a bucket list. And, you know, had a chance for her to sign the book. And we had this conversation, honestly, in Bellingham, in this small little place before COVID hit. It was pretty weird. I was like, there's only like a couple hundred people here. Like, this is kind of weird because she's pretty big. And the only thing I could think of to say to her, because I only had a very short moment, I was just like, thank you. Like that, I can't think of anything else, just thank you. And so when those women were DMing you and like, it was just like, thank you. Like, thanks for taking it on the shoulder, man. Like, thanks for taking it on the chin. Because
it makes it worth it, because you're like, you don't know. And it's just that little bit of validation from someone being like, you hit home for me. I'm like, okay, one person.
Yeah.
Okay, it was worth it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to wrap up. I have a special question for you, but before we do, you know, all of this aside, I always think it's important, like, and I think it just gives such insight, and when you put it out there, it manifests. So outside of the book and outside of the script and outside of all of that, what's a bucket list thing for you? What's something that's on your bucket list that, you know, it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be small, just bucket list. What do you want to check off?
Mine's gonna be very random because I've been lucky that I think I just did my biggest bucket list. Well, not biggest, but it was the last thing on my bucket list career-wise that I really wanted to do stunt-wise this year.
This doesn't have to be career. This could be anything.
So my random, I do have a random list of things.
Yeah, what's your random?
I almost did it like 10 years ago, and then I just didn't drive off the road and go do it, take an hour break. It's really dumb. I've wanted to skinny dip in Crater Lake since I was like 17.
All right.
So someday I will do a road trip and I will drive down to Crater Lake. I don't know why Crater Lake, but it was stuck in my head. And that would be my random. Love random. There's my very random bucket list item that I have not done.
All right. I see, this is why, because it's super cool. Okay, look, tell people where they can follow you. Tell people again the book, and tell people how they can follow you personally. And then I have one final really good question for you.
All right.
All right.
Best to follow me on Instagram at Maja Aro Stunts. It's spelled with a J, MAJAARO Stunts. My graphic novel is Amazon with an E, graphic novel. And you can also look me up on Facebook, Maja Aro. Those are probably the best places to follow me.
All right. And you guys, you know, it's in the show notes. So, you know, if you're driving, just look at the show notes later. We thank you so much. What an amazing conversation that we had today. Before you go, my dear, and, you know, for you, this is like, of course. So before you pack your suitcase and you go to that desert island, just you and you got room for one album in your suitcase. What album could you imagine not listening to for the rest of your days?
Oh.
And it can't be a playlist. It's got to be, you know, good old vinyl. We're talking vinyl.
It would probably either be Abbey Road or by the Beatles, or Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses.
Pick one. You've only got room.
Guns N' Roses.
All right, Guns N' Roses it is. I was just listening to Axl Rose the other day. I'm like, look at you go. Sweet child. I mean, that man can move. I'm like, okay. He's like an animated lizard. Okay.
I used Paradise City for my first fashion show, Runway.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, look. Thank you so much for being here. You guys, do I need to tell you that we are doing this most incredible? I want to talk about the book. There's lots of things that are going on, you guys, right now. You know that we've got the planner, the entrepreneur creative. Hey, I'm so busy. I need reverse engineering structuring planner to help you get through this whole next year. And so if you want it, we've got it. So you know how to reach out. There is the largest authorship and speakership happening for International Women's Day. That's going from 2023 of March all the way to Mother's Day of 2024. If you speak and you want to be on stage and you got something to say, contact me. If you'd like to be featured as one of the 262 women in the 262 Mission Accepted, basically Rock the World. I'll just say Rock the World book. That's not the title, but you know what I mean. If you want to be in there, I want you to be in there. So look, super hard to get a hold of me. It's deb@debdrummond.com. I'm sure you can't remember that. Super easy. Or if you want to be where she is and you want to be sitting and chatting and sitting on the couch having a conversation and sharing your mission with the world, I want to hear from you. So you guys are fantastic. I love you, adore you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I look forward to having more conversations with you and having you back and being a part of supporting your book launch. That will be an incredible thing. So thanks everybody. Be groovy, stay cool, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.